Welcome to episode 122. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and let me introduce you to today's guest, Elliott Bayev. Elliott is a returning guest to the podcast, first appearing on episode 31, published on December 23rd, actually my birthday, in 2018. Elliott is a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the owner of OpenMat Mixed Martial Arts in Toronto. He also runs Mastermind BJJ, private BJJ training and retreats for entrepreneurs. Elliott feels Jiu-Jitsu teaches a lot about life and has written about the lessons he teaches to entrepreneurs. His latest project is BJJ 101 TV, a site dedicated to helping beginners figure out Jiu-Jitsu. And since last appeared on the podcast, he has written a book with Daniel
Moskowitz.
Moskowitz. All right. Sales Jiu-Jitsu, the secret black belt system for champion leaders, a book designed at aiding the already high-performing person or company to reach an elite level. Elliott, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, so I was mentioning to you, I'm probably past a little bit of half of the book right here. So for everyone's watching on YouTube, showing the book here. For people listening on Spotify or any other platform, make sure that you take a look. Well, I will add the link for the book too. So let's talk a little bit about, let's go straight to the book. Some of the concepts also, Elliott, I'm going to be sharing for all the listeners, going to be sharing the screen too. So that'll be good for people who are actually watching, listen on YouTube. Maybe, as I mentioned, people just listen to audio, maybe can have a chance to look into it. So let me know whenever you want to share, if you want to, well, let's go a little bit before when the idea start cooking about this book.
Sure. So in my Mastermind BJJ classes, the ones for entrepreneurs, my now co-author came out to a session. And while I was teaching, every once in a while, as I'd kind of share a little bit of like jiu-jitsu philosophy or talk about technique in a certain way, you'd see his eyes light up. And after the training, we'd all go for brunch and do a little masterminding business stuff. And I asked him, like, what was it that stuck out? And as we got to talking, there were so many overlaps between the ways I taught jiu-jitsu and the ways he taught sales. And as we kept talking, someone just suggested, hey, you guys should write a book. And now 2 years later, here we are. So
that is awesome, man.
Yeah.
And I was listening I was reading the story when you're in college and you're wrestling and you hurt your neck. Which was pretty brutal. Maybe you can share this a little bit with people too. It's in a book, but you can just give maybe I was just imagine the way you're describing of your neck, one side of just being rolled the other way. I was really like, ugh. Just really just imagine how bad that looked. Can you just picture the scenario real quick?
Yeah, it was my first day at U of T wrestling, and we were doing gut wrenches. For those not familiar, bottom person is face down, trying not to get rolled onto their back. Top person grabs them by the waist and tries to roll them all the way over for points. And I didn't know what to do. It was my first day of wrestling. I was just wrestling to improve my jiu-jitsu. Coach wasn't paying attention. And coming from jiu-jitsu where you're keeping everything tight, I had my kind of chin on the mat like this, thinking he was going to roll me to my left. He rolled me to my right. My chin caught, and he rolled twice hard, and my head caught both times. Head spun almost 180, or got turned around almost 180, and my thumbs went numb, had terrible pain right away. And I tried to keep going, but it was pretty bad. So that ended up eventually leading to 2-3 week periods where I couldn't stand. If I wanted to get out of bed, I had to put my fingers on my collarbone just to hold my head up. And it was rough. And it was, your specialty is the mental game. And it was a real big challenge. It was right when I had kind of left the corporate world to commit to, doing jiu-jitsu full time so that I could work on what I'm working on now. And your whole identity, your whole identity is wrapped up in being an athlete and being strong and being a competitor. And then all of a sudden you can't even stand. It really was a tough period. And I say now it was 3 weeks, but at the time you're like 1 hour in is this going to go away? 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, like the next day. And it really, really challenges you. And so one of the things we talk about in the book, and I'll share the framework in a minute, but the first thing is your inner game. And we're all going to have ups and downs, but the most important thing is understanding your why. And for me, I had a larger project which we can talk about later that I wanted to focus on, but I saw jiu-jitsu as a vehicle to kind of get me there. And so I just committed my life to kind of going down this path, and now I couldn't even stand on my own. And what allowed me to kind of get through that was having a strong why that allowed me to kind of find, I went on this search of finding different healing modalities, ways to heal my neck, ways to eventually get back into, light training, lifting again, eventually training, and then back into high level competition.
Man, it's brutal. Before getting into the book, just curiosity, how is your area? How is Toronto with COVID and everything? We are recording this in May 2021. So how's it looking?
It's a little rough.
Yeah.
Canada has not been doing amazing generally. We're in lockdown. They keep extending lockdown. So
Really?
Yeah. Restaurants are closed. I mean, a lot of businesses are closing. We've been lucky that, we've had some support from students, but the government's helping cover the rent, part of it anyway. So, but it's been slow, and, not as bad as some areas, like hearts go out to India, of course, but like for North America, I hear what's going on in the States where things are improving every day. So compared to there, we're quite a bit behind.
Yeah, and depending on some of the states too. Here, for people who don't know, I'm in Arizona. It's moving a lot better now. I know that some states are still rough, recovering. California, New York, I know there's some specific spots are pretty rough. But yesterday there was a tournament in town. Over the weekend, and man, it was busy. And I don't think I could count. Maybe the only people I saw with a mask was like the refs, and basically barely wearing, just kind of bring down here. Like most people not wearing, getting back to normal. And at this point, I like the flexibility of, do you want to wear it? Go ahead, wear it. You don't want to wear it? Don't wear it. Just each one, just do whatever. At this point that we at here, I'm not consistently watching the news, because I'll tell you what, the beginning, the news, they really messed me up, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're just watching, and then as soon as it happened, we start thinking about school liability. What if someone dies? What are they going to sue us? You know what I mean? So at one point, I just stopped the news, because it was just, man, it was not helping me.
In general, that can be, a good idea. News, they say it's news, but it's so often it's bad news, right? There's a lot going on in the world. And then, 50 years ago, news stations were independent. Now they're corporately owned. And so, a lot of us have questions about the influences that news channels have. And then now in a situation like this, where people want to be extra cautious, it's easy to lead to a little bit extra fear being spread, right?
For sure. All right, so let's do this. Let's work on you sharing your screen so you can show the layout of the book.
Sure. So the book is based on this 4-step formula I came up with for really this. I've been, feedback from some of the folks in the Mastermind Jiu-Jitsu program was that this applies to any area of life. This is kind of a process I have been doing unintentionally with my students, but writing the book forced me to put it together. So the book is based on a 4-phase process for preparing for, entering, winning, and learning from a competition. So, and then we apply that to a sales engagement. So the book is for kind of corporate sales folks, entrepreneurs, anyone who has sales in their business. But again, this can apply really anywhere. So we break down each section. So pre-fight is broken down into inner game, intelligence and strategy, the fight section, when we actually go in and engage, a match itself starts with how do you connect, how do you spot and take advantage of openings, and then how do you position yourself to eventually set up your win. Once you're ready to win, we get into how do you start attacking the submission, prep for counters, and then actually follow through the finish. And then post-fight, we want to learn from every fight, every match, in the sales context, every sales engagement, win or lose. A lot of us, in jiu-jitsu, a lot of us will learn from our losses. I think that's actually pretty mature, and it doesn't happen all the time. But if you ever do lose, it's good to go study the tape and see what you could have done differently, even learn what did the opponent do well. And a lot of folks do that, but are you also doing the same thing from your wins? Sometimes when you have an easy win, it's easy to think, oh, there's nothing to learn there. But if you do this, and this is where having a system is really important. If you learn as a system and you do a post-mortem after every match, you're going to find things that you can learn from every engagement. And so we, as you've seen in the book, I'll write a section on, inner game, the subsection of goals or mindset and emotions from a jiu-jitsu perspective, tell a story about kind of my competition history or my students' successes or challenges. And then my co-author, Daniel, will write the same section from a sales perspective and give strategies for making the same principle apply well in a sales environment.
Now, what did you say it's one of the areas that people tend to underestimate and what do you say?
Ooh, there's so much in each of them. So
yeah,
for example, and then there are things that in a jiu-jitsu people will kind of take for granted, because there are things that are in jiu-jitsu that are, best practices that we just do automatically. But for example, under strategy, we develop a game plan, we have an optimal outcome we want to achieve, but then we have to train it, and what is it that separates jiu-jitsu from, say, Japanese jiu-jitsu or many other arts? Sometimes they have the exact same techniques, but it's that we train alive, we train with resistance. So once my partner had kind of understood that, he immediately took it to his business. He works for a company called Advance Your Reach, which teaches people how to kind of sell from the stage, so to speak, get onto a stage and then promote their products, et cetera. And he has a big sales team, and he was having them do role playing. But when he was having them do role playing, it was very mechanical. They were they weren't doing a live training. And when he learned the idea of the live training, he had them now start actually challenging each other and putting each other on the spot. And why does jiu-jitsu make you tougher? Because it preps you for real intensity. If you only ever train mechanically and you never fight against someone who's actually trying to stop you, what happens in a self-defense situation or a competition? You won't be ready for that intensity. And so you can take that principle to any area of life. And so we take this kind of process of looking at each of these sections in the jiu-jitsu context and then apply it, in this case, in sales, but again, you can apply it really anywhere.
And what about maybe a game changer thing that a lot of people that read and start using the system say, like, man, this specific part here really helped me? What did you say?
Well, what is the secret to jiu-jitsu? The one principle all of it's based on: positioning. From a good position, things are easy. From a bad position, things are hard. And so there's a very natural, so we have, in addition to the book, we have a video course, and we have a private training program that we take people through. And so we have a lot of entrepreneurs in that. And a common mistake you'll see is when someone, say, is engaged with a client, they've done the kind of initial steps and they've gotten to a quote unquote good position, they try to jump to the close. They try to jump to the final step. And it's like a white belt. This is the most common thing we see. White belt in a tournament, they pass the guard, they get side control, and immediately they try to jump to mount without actually securing the position. But understanding that positioning is based on this idea of, like, first and foremost, Once you get to a good position, your job is not to get to the next best position. It's to keep it. Don't get pushed back at all. Make sure you really have it. And then you can think about improving, but it's not big jumps. If a big opportunity comes up, you seize it, but it's little increments, small steps to improve your position slightly. So we might spend a minute or two in side control, making little adjustments before thinking about going to mount. And then in mount, simply getting a crossface, getting an underhook, like these little improvements make a big difference and allow you to start thinking about, again, don't jump for the submission, set it up. This is very kind of common for jiu-jitsu people to think about, but in other contexts, not as obvious. Positioning is what makes losing impossible and winning inevitable. And so when we get to, a great position in the mount, we've killed the guy's arms and they're totally out of position. Again, it's easy to jump to that final jump into the submission. But our job is to, there's an expression in Eastern philosophy. Most people are not successful in their endeavors because they're not as careful in the end as they are in the beginning. So when we get to a submission, we get to an armbar, we don't just try to finish it right away. We want to secure it. So once we get into submit, we attack the submission, say an armbar, but instead of trying to finish right away, like, are you pinching your knees? Are you rotating their thumbs so they can't start escaping? We want to treat the end just as carefully as we do the whole rest of the game. And, and so we go pretty deep. And one of the things that even in jiu-jitsu where the mature fighter is going to learn from their losses. We talked about this idea of learning from our wins. So I have a purple belt who's actually fighting soon, Mir Bounty, who was fighting a local black belt. And we knew that if the black belt was going to have a chance, it was going to be on the ground. And the strategy was to never let the fight go to the ground. Amir ended up winning in 2 or 3 minutes. It'd be very easy to look at that and say, oh, there's nothing to learn. This is one-sided. But because we do this as a process, we're able to see that there was one moment where even though he was keeping really good distance, the black belt shot from a long distance and got in on his hips. He stuffed the takedown, got on top, ground and pound, and won within 30 seconds after that. But why did the guy get in on his hips? Had we not done this analysis, we would not have seen that he was keeping good distance, but he was also staying right in front of him. He wasn't circling. So using a post-mortem after every engagement, in a jiu-jitsu context, match, is really useful. And so one thing we say when we're talking about the book or the video course is, like, you can take any one of these elements and it'll make a difference. But if you take them as a system, the idea is that what you learn from post-fight after an engagement then becomes information in your pre-fight intelligence for the next match. And so it's a system that's constantly recursive, which is why it helps us improve on the mats, but also in business allows for, that constant never-ending improvement.
Awesome. On page 78, we talk about the connection formula, which is pretty cool too, and just reminding some of the things that I've learned in public speaking, that is kind of building that rapport before that you possibly do on the phone, or you get like, hey, what do you know about this person or whatever? So you have something to connect. And that's something that as I mentioned, I learned with my mentor, that would go have a presentation. He would do his best to always arrive earlier, go to the meet and greet, just kind of talk with people, in general. And very often, and I got used to do that too, that it's always good, like in the middle of the presentation, you can bring something back. Like, I was talking with so and such about this earlier, which is a great technique that feel that there's the rapport, there is the connection, and it's a great tool, even if it's as simple as it is, but just a simple mention already helps. And now building this rapport and connection. Like, let's say we have a lot of jiu-jitsu owners who are listening, and then when you sit to talk with a person before, kind of like a mini interview, like, all right, why do you want to train? And then start talking and try to catch something like, did you practice sports growing up? Like anything that you can find some connection. Oh yeah, I did, and it's kind of like right away the conversation starts to like, the guards are coming down a little bit. There's not that much of that resistance. Like this guy's trying to sell me, you know? So if you can expand to everyone about that, because people have that fear of like, this guy's going to sell me something right away, you know? So talk more about the connection.
So, Hickson talks a lot about connection on the mats. The idea is to connect with the opponent and really connect on your terms is one of the whole sections. But in the sales context, my co-author, Daniel, talks about the connection formula being 5M plus 5R equals C. 5 minutes. So this is more in a kind of corporate context, but the same principle applies in a jiu-jitsu school. 5 minutes of research, the R is research, on 5 different platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., will help you find nuggets of information to better understand the person. And why is that important? A book that I'm sure you're familiar with, and many of your audience, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The first 3 habits are about how you deal with yourself. The next 3 are how you deal with other people. And one of the key ones is seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. If you try to talk to someone and get your message across, but don't listen to them, they're not going to be ready to hear what you have to say. But if they feel really heard, then they're going to be very open. And so his kind of hack for that is you need to be able to express in terms better than they could why they're there and what they want. And so what you're talking about, connecting with, say, the prospective student, is so important because they're there to, for whatever reason, whether it's self-defense or competition or fitness or whatever. Well, even if you don't know that, if you haven't done the job to listen to them and even understand what goals they have, maybe they got in a street fight or something. And therefore, if you haven't done that work and you're trying to sell them on the competition aspect, you are selling, and selling in the bad sense. You're not listening, you're not understanding where they're coming from. But if you listen to why they actually came in and you can articulate it, because again, often people coming into a jiu-jitsu academy or a martial arts school of any type, they don't even know why they're coming in. Something's calling them, and you can help them figure that out and articulate. And then the better you understand why they're coming in, the more you can apply the strengths of your school to that and really make it synergistic versus, just a one-way conversation. And ultimately, so much of why people come is community. And if they come and their first experience is, oh, this person doesn't listen to me, they're just here to talk down to me, they're not going to be feeling like they're likely to become a valued member of that community.
Yeah, and I think a little by I think there's a transition, like in the beginning in jiu-jitsu used to be so like, man, now you don't sell, it's like the hobby thing, you know what I mean? You come in and it has evolved into a business. I mean, I come from a time to, and especially in the 90s, that you didn't have that like a sales process in jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? Like, so what you do, that's it. But now there is something more elaborate. I'm not saying everyone does, but there's something more elaborated. And did you feel this kind of like transition going into like becoming a little more business oriented with jiu-jitsu? When did you start noticing that?
Oh man, it was transformative for me, and I wish I had started earlier. It wasn't until, so I started my first school in maybe 2004. It wasn't until 2008 or 2009 that I started studying the business side of things and finding mentors and coaches. And that was so important because, and I think a lot of what gets people to start a school is that they just love jiu-jitsu and they've seen it change lives and they want to share that with others. And that's a beautiful thing. The problem is there's a really, for business owners of any kind, there's an important book called The E-Myth Revisited.
Great book.
And talks about, the baker who loves baking after a few years is miserable because she or he is stuck having to stay late and clean and having to, do the accounting and having to do all these things. And so they talk about the need to create systems so that eventually you don't need to be the person doing that, but you can trust that whoever is doing it, whoever you've hired, is competent and can actually be evaluated and measured so that you can do the things you love most, like teaching, or you might have something outside of running a school that you want to do as well. And if you never put systems in place, it's going to feel like you're always playing catch up, and you'll always have to be there. And if you want, and it's beautiful to want to teach jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I love teaching it. I love learning. But there are other things I want to do in life. And if I never got kind of the systems in place, I would feel it's easy to feel trapped in your school, right?
Yeah, right now, especially because of everything is going on with COVID, said that the mastermind now it's paused. But when the idea came to start doing the mastermind at BJJ, was around that time, or maybe just going back and thinking like, man, that would be, I wish I had something like that when I needed, maybe like you said, in the mid 2000s or so.
Well, Mastermind BJJ was not necessarily for school owners. This was for entrepreneurs because, again, like sales jiu-jitsu is a perfect example of it. There's so many, and everyone who trains knows this, there's so many amazing life lessons, strategy lessons that we learn on the mats. And entrepreneurs need best practice strategy. We need, business owners of any kind need access to this wisdom that we as jiu-jitsu people happen to be lucky to have access to. But it's also the training, the stress relief, like all the benefits of jiu-jitsu are good for entrepreneurs. Not to mention the social aspect, meeting other entrepreneurs on the mats and really nothing breaks the ice like jiu-jitsu, right? And so having that chance to connect, having that chance to have fun on the mats, having that chance to learn strategy from the mats, and then also be able to kind of have a masterminding networking session or in some cases, a weekend retreat where you really get to deep dive and build friendships is super valuable because, an entrepreneur might have a spouse that loves them to death, but that doesn't mean they understand what it's like to own a business. And so we need folks who have, whether it's a school or a products company or a service company, entrepreneurs need to connect with other entrepreneurs just to talk shop. And so that was part of the idea behind this, to give them access to the strategy and access to each other.
And back to, we talk about the connection and what jiu-jitsu brings, so forth. One of the things that it's very common, I'm always talking with brand new people that come in, and for the most part, not everyone, but most start the conversation like, yeah, I'm gonna get in better shape, learn how to fend myself. But it's always so much deeper than that. As you start digging, it's always so much deeper, and I tell them, as I start the conversation, start getting a little deeper, they start noticing more, because I said like, hey, everyone comes here talking about the same thing. They don't realize how much mental and emotional growth that you will have training. Only when you start to really living, be like, okay, now I understand what are you talking about. And the mental aspect, I always talk about, man, it's about problem solving, man. You're gonna problem solve every day, but with that comes the emotional growth too, because you're not going to be able to solve the problems anytime you want, the way that you want, and that's going to build your emotional resilience. And that's why jiu-jitsu is so good, because it transcends to everything in life. With that, like, you're not going to get the stuff that you want exactly the time that you want. I want this sweep here, I understand, but it's just not there, and you're not going to do it. So I feel that this part of the connection too, when I feel that when I'm able to get into that conversation, that's when the guards start to really come down. We talk about mental. So nowadays, a lot of people with a lot of anxiety, with the world, the way it is. So more talking about like the days that I was talking with one of my students a couple of days ago, that the day that you, for whatever reason, you're feeling anxious, you don't want to go, but when you've done, you're like, man, I'm so glad I came. You know what I mean? There's the days that you don't want to train. Most of the time, mentally, they're the ones that are being the best when you feel you're tired, but like, man, I'm so glad. I just had one of those days last week. I just woke up kind of anxious, and I'm like, like what? And I just start the negative talk. Of course, you know, the inner game start getting, you know, going like, are you going or not going? And then it just catch myself like, man, I know that after I'm gonna feel so much better. And you talk a lot about that in the beginning of the book too, with the inner game, and that's something that I always mention to everyone, with the students, competitors. In order to be ready for your external battles, you have to win the internal battles. If you cannot win the internal battles, it's going to be tough to perform well in external battles, which is sales, life in general, right?
Mhm. We all have our best selves where we're in the zone, we're performing kind of on all cylinders. And then we have kind of that lower version of ourselves where things aren't clicking, where we're not really present. And the difference between those two can be, you know, everything. You can be just as physically fit, you can have all the same skills and not perform. And that matters. That matters obviously on the mats, it matters in business, it matters in relationships. You know, how do you show up? And then what is your system? What is your process for when your head's not there? Because that's going to happen too. And if you know, in the art of war, they talk about how most people know only two ways to respond to conflict: fight or flight. But there's the third, planning ahead. And that's what jiu-jitsu is. Instead of coming into a self-defense situation and trying to figure it out, no. We plan for that. Or a competition, we plan for that well in advance and we train it. So are you doing the same thing for those days when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Maybe you have a competition that day, you didn't sleep. Okay, what's in the recipe book, in your plan for when you have a competition, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? What are you doing to get yourself back into a good state? And then if you can make that happen, you know, when I was still in the corporate world, people would comment that, you know, I seemed so calm. And I told them, you know, when you've had people who are trained to break arms and put you to sleep, try to break your arms and put you to sleep, like all of a sudden your boss getting angry doesn't quite hit you the same. And this is the thing. Jiu-jitsu increases your threshold, your comfort, your zone of comfort and capability and confidence. And if you can apply these things on the mats, then it becomes so much easier to apply to everywhere else.
Right on. Let's talk about the global unity. Can you let everyone know about it?
Yeah. So I've been working on this for 15 years. You know, before I started my first school, you know, I kind of woke up to injustice in the world, read a few books, and then saw some documentaries that showed me we're facing some systems problems. And so I'm thinking about how do we change these systems for a long time, and actually applying, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but applying mental jiu-jitsu to it. And mental jiu-jitsu is a heuristic I've come up with for how do we deal with problems. On the mats, it's easy to think, someone say, you know, someone keeps taking you down, taking you down, taking you down. It can feel like you have a problem, but we don't have a problem. Jiu-jitsu is asking us a question. How do you stop that takedown? We know every takedown has an answer. Every move can, you know, has an escape. Mental jiu-jitsu is the art of turning problems into questions. And so I've kind of used this and other theories and philosophies and strategies to think about, like, how do we actually make things better, and on a systems level. And so, you know, while running the school and competing and coaching, it was something I was kind of doing behind the scenes, but COVID has, you know, putting the school on pause and not being able to teach, it's given me the time to really dedicate, and the world obviously needs it. And so the easiest way to explain it is, if humanity were really working as one cohesive organism, where's the platform that facilitates that? It doesn't exist. So we have to build it. And so the problem with that is, even if you had all the best tools and technology and platforms in place, it won't be enough. If we're really going to build a better world, we're going to need to create a global movement. And if we're going to create a global movement, tools and platforms won't do it. So there's really a two-branch strategy. There's this ecosystem of platforms designed to facilitate larger coordination and collaboration between people. But there's also a narrative arc or mimetic. Memes are the idea of idea viruses. So a way to kind of not change minds, but offer a new way of looking at things. And so it's a big plan, but there was a guy on the Tim Ferriss show recently, Balaji Srinivasan, I think is how you pronounce his name. And he, very, very bright guy. Anyone interested in that, like tech, I think he's in the crypto space, co-founder of Coinbase. But he wrote an article on how to start a new country. And he talks about in history, the only ways you start a country are through war or through economics. And he goes through this list. But now with the birth of the internet, we have the capacity to start a country, a nation that isn't bound by geography. And could we, if we use these new tools, could we start kind of a new country of everyone for everyone? And so this is kind of it's a much larger kind of conversation, but this is some of the thinking behind it, and taps into a lot of some of the best thinkers who are out there today working on these kinds of things. And right now I've been kind of working on it privately, but I'm just now starting to speak a little more publicly about it.
Right on. And man, you're always involved in all kinds of projects. Did you promote tournaments too? No.
Yeah. So, and this was kind of the impetus behind the theme behind the tournament and the training camps we run. So Fight to Unite was a tournament.
Correct. Yes.
I ran a few years back, and then we've also run training camps. We had Oliver Taza and Ethan Krellenston and a bunch of like top flight Cameron Florzak and a number of other like top Canadian instructors, black belts, coming for a 1 week training camp. We also, when COVID first happened, there was like a shortage of masks. We had Stefan Kesting and Emily Kwok and 10, another 10 of Canada's top, and even John Thomas, who's not in Canada, do a fundraising webinar under the Fight to Unite banner. And the whole idea is that, and this is one of my philosophies broadly, and I think a lot of us feel this, look at what's happening in the Middle East right now, real, awful. But on the mats, we can have people from all walks of life be the best of friends, independent of their lineage, independent of their nationality. And so Jiu-Jitsu, I feel, can really be a force for sending a message to the rest of the world of unity and coming together. And so that was the idea and message behind Fight to Unite. The Jiu-Jitsu can be a force for good, and it is in many ways. There's Submit the Stigma, and there's many other like impact organizations using Jiu-Jitsu to spread a positive message. Roll Forever is doing some very cool things, but the idea is, can we get more explicit and actually bring the Jiu-Jitsu community together to not only share a message of like, we're all one, Genki Sudo's big message, but can we also then be an example to other communities to speak up for coming together? And, some might find it ironic that, one of the world's most effective martial arts is really, I think, teaches us peace. It teaches us, it's the jiu-jitsu person who's less likely to get into a fight than the person who doesn't train, because they know they don't have that need. They get that need out of them. They know they've come to appreciate and respect people from all walks of life because they're some of their best friends as a result of training. And so there's so many beautiful messages that jiu-jitsu teaches that I think, we can spread to the rest of the world.
Absolutely. And talking about organizations, let me just plug in Jiu-Jitsu Tribe for people who don't know. I always like to repeat. Some people may be watching for the first time, but I co-founded a nonprofit organization about 10 years ago, and we rebranded to Jiu-Jitsu Tribe a couple of years ago. And basically right now, we just help social projects that offer Jiu-Jitsu classes for free. A lot of them from Brazil, because we have so many programs in Brazil, which is pretty awesome. In US, as far as I know, I've been involved with two. I don't know many other programs, but it's if anyone wants to check it out, jujitsutribe.org. Mainly what we do right now, we just help fix up a place. Just go in, someone that is running a program is doing an incredible job, and the place is falling apart, the mats are, you know, falling apart, everything. So we do some type of fundraising, and then we make connections and stuff like with other sponsors. So it's been awesome. We just recently finished right now the beginning of May, work on a new group. Have you watched City of God, that
I,
movie?
I haven't. I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, it's man, it's one of my favorite movies. I think probably my favorite Brazilian movie. If you guys never watch it, highly recommend. I think it's on Netflix. Maybe it was, I don't know when it was from, maybe 02, 03 or something like that. It was nominated. It didn't win, but it was nominated for like some Academy Awards and stuff like that. So I was helping personally this group from City of God does an incredible job. But then now we got him brought him under the organization. So that was cool that we got like to fix their mats and paint the place. And even the sidewalk in front of the place was like all broken. So we fixed that and fixed the bathroom. And that dude, he does such an incredible job. It just gives me chills just to think about like how much this guy changed lives. There's one girl that is just one of the hottest prospects right now in jiu-jitsu, Gabriela Peçanha. She's been winning. She's been a fairly recent black belt, maybe 2 years. It's just because with COVID, she didn't compete as much, but she's been winning a lot of stuff. And then she's from there, 100% there. Big schools try to recruit her, because she was already getting like big results. And she's like born and raised from there. And the amount of lives this guy's changed, and so many social projects that there are. And I had the opportunity, this one, since we just started working with them, I haven't had the opportunity to go there personally, but usually when I go to Brazil, I go and visit some of the projects that we support. And it does something to you, man. It's incredible. I have shared here at some point in a podcast, one of the trips that I had in Brazil. There's a program that we support in Bahia in Brazil. And man, they right now it's probably been now close to 6, 7 years, but they literally train on the street. There's a sidewalk, there's a space where the bus usually come in. They place mats there because they didn't have any place to train. And man, that's what they train. I have a picture that is wild, like me training, and then there is a bus like not too far back from me. Seriously, like the chance of some like something really bad can happen if anyone lose control of a car or whatever. Things can go bad real quick. So we started a campaign to get a place for them, to get them off the street. And then COVID hit, and then like they still struggling there. Brazil is in the bad spot, so everything's kind of paused with that one. On that sense, I've been there in 2 different trips. I went there twice. But it's just crazy how you see like the kids happy, everyone's smiling. No one's like, he sent me a video of them like training, like raining. You know what I mean? Like just little things like that people are so happy with just so little, and being able to hopefully, we can set up a place for them. And this is just one example, but there's so many people helping other projects. But I don't think people realize how important, man, those projects are for their communities, because it's so easy to get in contact with get hooked up with the cartel. And then just for not carrying anything and just watching if the police is coming, they don't have to carry anything, any guns, any drugs, or anything. They will make more than mom and dad together. So that's pretty You know, that's pretty tempting. See all your friends rocking on nice shoes and whatever, and then you're like, I just need to watch. I don't have. And that's how it starts, of course. And then they kind of build a career from that. But anyway, anyone that wants to know more about Jiu-Jitsu Tribe and some of the stories of some of the places that we have helped, make sure to take a look at that. On Instagram's the same name, or you can go online to jujitsutribe.org. And I would love in the future to do any type of collaboration. We're always open for any type of like social work that you guys do.
It's beautiful you're doing that. It's I think we all want things to be better, and many of us feel there's nothing we can do, but jiu-jitsu folks are in a unique position because we have this thing that benefits people's lives. And so for you, you've been successful, and you've now taken that success and tried to use it to give back. And I think that's that's a beautiful example of more of what we need. And so if there's a way I can support, I'm more than happy. And yeah, like someone, and it's funny you say, like, someone who has nothing, we think that the only thing that's going to make their lives better is food and of course that those things are vital. But look how happy a kid who can't afford shoes can be just being on the mats and being. And one of the beautiful things of jiu-jitsu is that we're all equal, and doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter who you are on the mats. It's the work you put in, and it's the vibe that you bring, and everyone's a welcome part of a now a global community.
Yeah, I was the first time I went there. I remember I went back to my nice hotel, and I was just like, it was very emotional to me, to like some of the kids that I met and stuff, and just observing them. And then I was sitting with the instructor, and he was just telling me stories about that kid, and just telling me, different ones. And they show one, because they're in this neighborhood. They're riding between two different cartels, so they're kind of tolerated by both, because they're kind of in the middle. But they're kids that he was able to remove from the cartel to start training. And I never forget, because there was a kid, like he was a 12-year-old, a yellow belt, and before his turn 12, he was heavily involved with the cartel. And they came in one day, like literally to like whack this kid, to kill him. And he like basically just begged for his life. And this kid's been training, to this day, never got involved again. He's just start carrying the drugs, and next thing he's using the drugs. Now they want, where's the money? And they kill them just to make an example, and he mentioned around that time, one of the kids said, like, man, was riding from, because he lives very close. He was like, man, right across the street from my house, you guys came in a motorcycle, saw the kids stop, just popping, pop, 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 and then moved on. And now last month, he just, I saw a post, I got in contact with him, another student just got killed. Same thing, just got involved with this. So it's scary, man. It's just scary, and how ruthless. Because in Brazil, like anytime you say the term, like you say drug dealer, because here you can say drug dealer, this guy, it's like, no, he seems like a middle class guy, and then he just sells you. No, in Brazil, we say drug dealing, we're talking about like
Ruthless.
basically murder, like cold-blooded, like murders. You know what I mean? So it's like just bad news. So it's just happening, and this is just one story that I'm telling. This happens everywhere in Brazil, which is awful. It's really awful. So just having jiu-jitsu to be able to get those kids out, it's just so many big names in jiu-jitsu that came from those projects, like that they had nothing going on, and jiu-jitsu was the only way out, and be able to travel and see outside, and be like, man, I interviewed with Zaki Bayev maybe a month ago or so, and he has a beautiful story too, and of like, man, that's it. If it's, family, dad is, in jail, and a cousin, and dad, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so many like bad news. And you'd be able to, because of sport, in this case jiu-jitsu, to be able to get you out and then change your life is just incredible. And one of the things that we just started doing, I never really made public, is just is with Jiu-Jitsu Tribe. We're trying to make some connections with some schools. I started doing a pilot with my school of like working with some organizations, kids with behavior issues and so forth. And we did like a 12-week program with 5 kids. They with that in for free, and then give them the gi provided, just really shows who the kids are. And that was awesome, the transformation to see. And then unfortunately for some of those kids, they live too far, so now that was part of our learning process, like convenience to bring them in. One, the transformation was so big that the mom keeps driving. She was like, every time she talks about jiu-jitsu, how it impacted her, the mom starts crying, because it was like, I remember from the first day that she was like glued on the wall and just freaking out and super anxious, to now she's talking about competing. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. It's just crazy. Like the transformation I saw with the kids. So this is something that hopefully we can do more in the future. We're talking about a possibility of doing something in Australia too, with a school, and then start getting like each school maybe sponsor like maybe 5 kids from an organization. And after the 3 months, we reevaluate. Are you going to renew? Can they continue? Do they like, did it make an impact? So if I think every school just pick just a little bit, just a few, man, I think it can make a huge impact in the long run.
Fully. I mean, look at Abu Dhabi. It's in the institutions, right? Could we get that here? That's a proof of concept, right? And it's, change a country, you change one kid, you change the world. You change, I think they have 80,000 kids or something doing jiu-jitsu. It's insane. Why can that not be replicated in North America? I know there are like pockets, but again, it's because everyone's kind of working separately, and that was the idea behind Fights Unite. Like, can we work together, build like, say, a curriculum or even just a process for reaching out to schools and getting into schools? But that's it's a bigger topic.
I got you. So we're getting close to the end of the interview. So talk a little bit of everything, talking about the book. I'll make sure that I put the link too. So what else you want to share? What are you excited about? I know that the situation in Canada is kind of tricky right now, but we'll talk about global unity. And what about your site too? You have a technique site as well?
Yeah, bjj101.tv. So it's for beginners. There's two main programs. The Bjj Primer, which is kind of an intro to BJJ course. There's so much, that we just take for, even a blue belt would take for granted, even a 6-month white belt would take for granted of, how jiu-jitsu works and what's the theory. And so often one of the reasons school owners have a hard time bringing new folks in is because they're intimidated. And so this was a course I created, not just for my students, but really for anyone new to jiu-jitsu, to kind of get what it's all about. And then the main program is my blue belt curriculum, which is a very, like most blue belt curricula, if they exist, a lot of places they don't. If they exist, they have maybe 50 to 150 techniques. And you can be a very good blue belt only knowing that many techniques, but you're probably going to have a lot of holes. And, I was always trying to think, BJ Penn, when he trained with Higan Machado after getting his black belt, he's like, they're blue belt black belts and they're black belt black belts. And he was like, I'm a blue belt black belt, Higan's a black belt black belt. And I started to apply the same thinking to the blue belt. Is there a white belt blue belt and a black belt blue belt? Right? So what's the blue belt that has no holes in the basic positions? And so the problem is, so this curriculum has like 350-ish techniques. The problem is, how do you teach that? How do you retain it? And so Eddie Bravo has done a lot of cool, innovative stuff. But one of the things I like is the structure of his warm-ups, because he has many affiliates, right? So how do you get so many people that you can't touch directly? So he uses basically sequences, flows, right? The only thing is those tend to be pretty advanced moves. So the 10th Planet style is very competition focused, aggressive. And so where's that for beginners? And so using the same structure like he has, I think 8 sets of four sequences. This has 16 sets of 6 sequences. So 96 flows altogether. It's designed to take someone from, if you knew everything in here, like you'd be very close to purple belt, I think, because the idea is to have no holes in your game, as at the basic level. Of course, you're not going to learn worm guard and all the advanced things at that level, but the long-term vision is to have eventually a purple belt and a brown belt and a black belt that use the same format, so that we can teach so much. Because even if we're teaching a mount escape, so someone knows how to escape when someone's grinding their throat, but if they don't know how to escape when they're being choked with a gi or bully choked or have a crossface, like you don't know the variations. And so this format allows for variations, and yeah, it was a lot of work. It's like I've been wanting to do this since I started a school 15 years ago. So this is 15 years plus, my 25 years total of jiu-jitsu, trying to think of like, how do you make all this knowledge digestible, and then make it specific to each belt. Oh, you're muted.
You mentioned 16 sets of 6.
That's right.
Moves. So did you find that the 6 is a good number, as far as not too much, not too little?
Yeah, well, there are many ways. So this is also designed because I've had like black belts share that they love their school, they love their affiliation that they're part of, but they don't necessarily offer a lot of curriculum help, and they don't want to leave their affiliation to get a curriculum, so they're kind of stuck. But this is a curriculum that you don't need to be affiliated with anyone. I mean, I have some affiliates, but you don't need to leave, and so this allows you to have a plug and play curriculum. And even for, say, karate schools or jiu-jitsu schools, Japanese jiu-jitsu schools, it allows you to have this plug and play curriculum. And the idea is that there's many ways to teach it. So we have Hayabusa Academy in Kingston, Ontario. Before the shutdown, they were using this as their curriculum, and they were doing one of the 16 lessons per week. Other places, like we were doing 2 per week. So like you do lesson 1 and 2 this week, and you wouldn't go as deep with all of them, but because it's on video, the students can watch it in advance, go practice it on the mats. And it also makes so many things easier. It makes testing easier. It makes, and of course they still have to roll. They have to be quality, at actually competing or sparring, but it's very flexible that way. So you can really structure the actual teaching any way you want.
Awesome. So for people who want to reach out and learn more about what you do, so yeah, let us know, social media, website, whatever website you want to.
Yeah, right on.
Share.
So for the book and for the video course and kind of corporate sales training, it's salesjujitsubook.com. For Global Unity, if you want to learn more about that, it's globalunity.org, and bjj101.tv for any of my jiu-jitsu video stuff.
Right on. Elliot, thank you so much, man, for revisiting. I think maybe you're what either the second or the third person to come here twice. I'm not sure, maybe second or third. Robert Drysdale came twice, and I can't remember right now if maybe you're second or third, but I'm glad you're here.
Appreciate it, brother.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions, let us know. You can go on my Instagram too, Gustavo Dantas, BJJ. Usually I'm active there. You can send me a message there, and I see you soon. Later.